Hey everybody, welcome to the videos for my core plays for the two-game Monday Night Football primetime slate for tonight on Draftkings. Two pretty good games for us on tap. We got the Chiefs versus the Patriots, which, yeah, I did lose some luster with Cam Newton being out, but we still get to watch Patrick Mahomes play football alongside Tyreek Hill, CLYDE, HELAIRE, and Travis Kelce, which is always a treat. But the game I like the most here is this Packers versus Falcons game. It's going to be absolutely bananas. We got a 57-point over-under. Packers got a team total of 32. And there's a lot of good fantasy options in each game. So I'm looking forward to this slate. I'm sure you guys are as well. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit that subscribe button. And we're all season long trying to help you guys become better NFL DFS players. And I cover other sports as well. So if you're going to come back to the channel each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new videos. If you want to follow me on social media, my handle's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And if you want some more content over on Patreon, always much appreciated. You get access into the entire NFL DFS data sheet and my Discord chat as well. So links down below for that if you're interested. If not, that's fine. Let's just dive into today's core plays for the two-game Monday Night Football slate. And leading us off here with core play number one, it's no other than Aaron Jones at 7,300. He is one of the more expensive plays on this slate, but I have a hard time doing him. It's not the best play on this slate. DAVANTE Adams is questionable for this game. I'm assuming he's a full go, but if he happened to miss, that's just another boost for Aaron Jones in the passing game, and just overall hope this be pretty much the focal point on offense. I mean, he pretty much is already, but if DAVANTE Adams is out, it's just a boost for him. But I'm assuming DAVANTE Adams does play, and spoiler alert, he's going to be a core play for me, but both are excellent options here. I love trying to plug in both. But Aaron Jones, you're pretty much just plugging him in. I don't see a scenario where you're going to fade Aaron Jones. It's just a very risky scenario. If you want to get different in a tournament, sure. But if you guys are building one lineup, I'd have a hard time fading Aaron Jones. The Packers, and they have a 32 implied team total here, a 7-point favorite at home, 57-point over-under. I want some exposure to this game, and especially the Packers, and Aaron Jones pretty much the top of that list. He's been doing great this season. He's been scoring a lot of touchdowns, over 100 rushing yards per game, 16 rushing attempts per game, 6.1 yards per carry, which is fantastic. He's also heavily involved in the passing game as well, with an 18% target share, nearly 6 targets per game, and 31 receiving yards per game as well. Now, the matchup versus Atlanta, so far this season, they haven't been awful versus running backs, only allowing 68 rushing yards per game, 25 Draftkings points per game, and 17th DVA versus the run. But we know this is a defense that's always going to struggle with pass catching running backs. They always give up receptions to running backs, and they're doing that again this season. I mean, they're allowing over a half a receiving touchdown per game to running backs and nearly 7 receptions per game as well. And Aaron Jones, he's a capable pass catcher. We know he can do plenty of damage through the air. And a big reason that these numbers are kind of low for the Atlanta Falcons, like they're only allowing 68 rushing yards per game, it is just super easy to pass on this defense. But the Packers should be able to do whatever they want here. Aaron Rodgers has been on absolute fire to start this season. And again, a 32 implied team total here, and they're 7-point favorites at home. This sets up very well for another big Aaron Jones game. He's had 2 okay games this season, around 17, 16 points. But then he had that huge game versus Detroit where he nearly scored 50 DraftKings points. I'm not saying he's going to score 50 DraftKings points again, but I love the matchup here, and Aaron Jones is certainly one of my favorite plays, if not my favorite play on this slate. In core play number 2 here, we have Clyde Edwards-Helaire at only $6,200. I just feel like he is way too cheap here, and I feel like just plugging in the 2 best running backs on this slate. It's not that hard to do. Aaron Jones, RB1 for the Packers. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, RB1 for the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you're going to be the RB1 for Andy Reid and the Kansas City offense with Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, yeah, you're always going to usually be a big threat for fantasy points. And that definitely holds true on this slate. Also, the Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites at home with a 30-point implied team total, which is kind of right below the Packers. So I have plenty of interest in Helaire here. He should be able to I feel like the Chiefs are going to have a decent lead here, especially with no Cam Newton. So they should rely on Helaire near the end of the game or in the second half just to pretty much kill the clock and run the ball the entire game. He's also involved in the passing game as well, but he's getting nearly 20 rushing attempts per game right now, 80 rushing yards per game, and nearly 5 targets per game. He didn't really do anything in the first week through the passing game, but that's definitely ramped up the past couple of weeks, and now he owns a 13% target share in the season with a 21% weighted opportunity share. Now, the matchup versus the Patriots doesn't sound great, but they haven't been that great versus running backs so far this year. 19th DVA versus the run, about 23 DraftKings points per game allowed to running backs, and 100 rushing yards per game as well. So Helaire, and only $6,200, I just feel like he is way too cheap, and I feel pretty good about just plugging in Eric Jones. Did I say Eric Jones? I'm thinking NASCAR. If you guys watch NASCAR, there's a NASCAR driver named Eric Jones. But Aaron Jones and Clyde Edwards-Helaire here, like the prices on both, and they should be huge pieces of their offenses on Monday night. And then core play number 3 for me is Davante Adams at $7,000. I'm assuming he's going to play in this game. He said he's not going to play until he feels 100%. He logged a couple of full practices at the end of the week, and if he's active, that means he's pretty much 100%. And if he's 100% versus the Atlanta Falcons, even if he wasn't 100% versus the Falcons, I think he's a pretty good play because that defense is horrendous versus the pass so far. And Davante Adams, he's one of the best wide receivers in football. He's going to have a high volume. Now, he really only have, I think I only said a high volume. He's going to have high volume. He's a very talented wide receiver, and he's Aaron Rodgers number 1, and he gets a great matchup. But we really only have a 1-game sample size this season because in week 2 versus Detroit, he barely played. He played the first half, but then in the second half, they had such a huge lead, and he also had that injury, and he just really never needed to come back into the game. So we're kind of working with a 1-game sample size. But if you guys want to read the numbers of what he did in week 1, this is what led him to be chalk in week 2. So we had 17 targets versus Minnesota, 2 touchdowns, caught 14 of those 17 targets, and had 156 receiving yards. Then the following week, 3 catches on 3 targets for 36 yards. Again, that was a very disappointing first half. Like, not going to lie, I mean, him getting hurt, he didn't really do much when he was on the field in the second week. But, I mean, I would have assumed he would have done some damage in the second half. And Davante Adams was absolutely fantastic last season with Aaron Rodgers, and I have to expect that's going to continue here. Now, if you're looking at the matchup for the numbers-wise versus the Atlanta Falcons, they have been awful versus the pass, especially versus wide receivers. 17th DVOA versus the pass, allowing 52.7 Draftkings points per game to wide receivers, over 200 receiving yards per game to specifically wide receivers. That's not throwing in running backs and tight ends, just strictly wide receivers. And then 2.33 receiving touchdowns per game as well. And also Allen Lazard is going to be out for this game for quite some time. So it's pretty much Davante Adams, Tonyan, Aaron Jones, and Scantling. And there's always going to be a couple of other guys in the mix as well. But if Davante Adams is a full go here, we should see 10 to 15, maybe just a little bit more targets here. It's a fantastic matchup. We have a 32 point applied team total here for the Packers. So as long as he's out in the field, I would expect Davante Adams to have a pretty big game here. At only $7,000, I feel like we're getting a pretty nice bargain for him. And I know I put 3 expensive guys in HELAIRE and Aaron Jones and Davante Adams, but they're really not that expensive. It's not that hard to fit them in. I would assume they're probably going to end up being the 3 highest owned guys on these slate, but I'm not really thinking about ownership here. This is just my straight up favorite plays on this slate. So Davante Adams, Aaron Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think this is a very good starting point to your lineups. And since these guys were pretty expensive, the next core play is going to be a more cheaper guy, just so we can balance out our lineups a little bit because you can't afford all the expensive guys on this slate, unfortunately. All right, now, so core play number 4 for me is Russell Gage at 4,500. Are Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones pretty good plays? Sure, but keep in mind they're also banged up. Now, they're questionable for this game, and Russell Gage is actually coming off an injury where he had a concussion, but he's cleared and good to go. I'd expect them both to play, but if they both happen to miss for some reason, Russell Gage is going to be one of the best plays on the slate. The Falcons love to throw the ball quite a bit. They're going to be trailing in this game, so Russell Gage would get a ton of work here, but I still think he's a pretty good play even if they both play. And we've seen multiple games now where Russell Gage is pretty involved, even with Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones playing and Hayden Hurst as well. So there's plenty of targets to go around in this offense. Again, Matt Ryan's a guy that's going to be throwing the ball quite a bit here. I mean, just looking at Matt Ryan's numbers this year, he's averaging 320 passing yards per game, about 2.5 passing touchdowns, and 42 pass attempts per game as well. So plenty of volume for a lot of these guys to go around. But Russell Gage, he's been surprisingly heavily involved so far for this offense. And if you're looking at his numbers for the first couple of weeks, if I can pull him up, around 8 targets per game, which last week he got knocked out early with a concussion. So if you're looking at just the first 2 weeks, he saw 12 targets and 9 targets, which is pretty good. He's got about a 19% target share in the season, 62 receiving yards per game. He's also found the end zone. And with defenses key on guys like Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, even Hayden Hurst, and Todd Gurley, Russell Gage can kind of be the forgotten guy. And at $4,500, if he's going to give me close to 10 targets here, I'd say anywhere from like 6 to 10 targets is what we're going to get from Russell Gage. I would take that all day at $4,500, like that price point. And he's kind of just an easy fit into our lineups. And I'd expect the Falcons to be trailing in this game. They are 7-point dogs on the road in Green Bay. They have a 25 implied team total, and they also play pretty fast as an offense as well. So Russell Gage at that price point, I think is actually a pretty solid salary relief option. And then my fifth and sixth final core plays here are Matt Ryan at $6,200 and Aaron Rodgers at $7,000. Now I have two of them listed here because these are the two quarterbacks I'm considering. Is Patrick Mahomes fine on any single slate no matter the defense he's playing? Sure, he's the best quarterback in football, but I can save a little bit of money and get the guys I like in a game that I like just a little bit better. I feel like this game is going to be a bit closer. Vegas would agree as well. It's Patrick Mahomes, 10.5 point favorites at home. I mean, there's a decent chance if we get to a large lead, it's going to be a lot of CLYDE HELAIRE, and that could kind of hurt Patrick Mahomes' ceiling. I think he's still going to have a fine game, but I can get Matt Ryan for $1,400 cheaper than Mahomes, and I think he's going to be throwing the ball all game long. And Aaron Rodgers got a 32-point implied team total. He's also at a $600 discount, and both these guys have been fantastic. Aaron Rodgers gets the better matchup here, so I guess we can kind of touch up on him first, but he's having a fantastic season so far. Nearly 300 passing yards per game, 3 passing touchdowns per game, hasn't thrown a pick yet, 35 pass attempts per game, and 8.4 yards per attempt with a 67% completion percentage. Now, if we're looking at the matchup versus Atlanta, this is a pretty good matchup so far. 17th DVA versus the pass. But they're allowing 36.5 DraftKings points per game allowed to quarterbacks so far this year, 362 passing yards per game, and 3 passing touchdowns per game. So they're getting absolutely torched through the air. And I think Aaron Rodgers should probably have a pretty good game here on Monday night. Now, if you can't get up to Aaron Rodgers at $7,000, I really like this price point at Matt Ryan at $6,200. I think this might lead to him being the highest owned quarterback because he's just a little bit too cheap here. Matt Ryan is a pretty good quarterback. He's got plenty of good options for the ball to. Now, if Julio Jones and Calvin really happen to not play, yeah, it would be a downgrade for him, but I'm assuming they're going to play, and there's just no lack of weapons here for Matt Ryan. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, who's been one of the best wide receivers in football this season, Hayden Hurst, Russell Gage, even you got Todd Gurley as well, so I would expect Matt Ryan to have a pretty solid game here. Like I mentioned earlier, he's throwing the ball quite a bit, over 320 passing yards per game. Matchup isn't as good versus Green Bay as it is for Aaron Rodgers versus Atlanta, but there's still 28th DVOA versus the pass, allowing over 20 DraftKings points per game to quarterbacks, 2.5 passing touchdowns per game, and 263 passing yards per game as well. So Matt Ryan, he's obviously a fantastic play, and I like that price point quite a bit. So I guess I would say he's my favorite quarterback on the slate, just point per dollar wise. And then I have Aaron Rodgers number 2, Mahomes number 3, and then obviously Brian Hoyer number 4. But yeah, I think that's pretty much going to be it for the video, guys. So I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure to leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out. Really do appreciate that. And if you haven't already, leave a like, which I think I already said, so I'm not going to say it again. If you want to follow me on social media, ChrisPennell16 on Twitter, CPenn16 over on IG. And if you want some more content over on Patreon, it's always much appreciated. I do put a lot of extra work into those data sheets each and every single week, and I do really think they are helpful. I think you will find them helpful, so if you're interested, links down below for that. But I'm going to head out of here, guys. Hope you guys enjoy the doubleheader on Monday night. I'm pretty excited about having 2 games. We get one at, 7 o'clock and 8:50, I think, are the start time, so should be a pretty fun Monday night with lots of good football, with 4 pretty solid football teams too. So, all right, I'm going to get out of here, guys. Appreciate you guys listening, and I'll see you in the next one.